Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 20th anniversary of our annual Being Seen virtual exhibition Artist Roundtable. My name is Kais, and I'm the Interim Public Programming and Partnerships Manager here at Workman Arts. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge this virtual space in which we are gathered, and our roundtable is being broadcasted on the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River. The territory in which we are broadcasting is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. As settlers and artists on this land, it is our duty to uphold these treaties and understand how our art interacts and impacts this land and upholds a collective wellness. Thank you all once again for joining us for this Artist Roundtable, and over to you, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kais, for your words and for opening the space. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this special Artist Roundtable. Before jumping into it, I'd like to set the stage by explaining a bit about the exhibition and to introduce the artists here today. To Speak Without Speaking is Being Seen's inaugural thematic exhibition. This year, Being Seen and Workman Arts has generously invited me to propose a theme and to curate a show featuring 11 Workman members. The show's theme was born from the need to think through the different ways in which we respond or have trouble responding to the deep-rooted scars that have resurfaced as a result of this current health and political crises. It also explores the artist's experiences within context of global trauma of the pandemic. Today, we have 4 of the 11 artists with us: Rick, V, Apanaki, and David. Thank you so much for joining me and for sharing your time. All right, so let's kick off this roundtable. I've got a question for all of you. The crux of this show is about translation. It's about leaning into art's visual language to express sentiments and emotions that words were just unable to capture. 2020, as you all know, has been described as many things: traumatic, historic, overwhelming, etc. But none of these words seem to really accurately capture what living through 2020 felt like. How has working on the pieces that you've made for this show allowed you to extend your quote unquote voice? Who wants to go first?
Apanaki, you go.
Okay, so this has been, it's been an interesting year. I still believe it's a continuation of 2020. So 2021 doesn't, it's just part 2020 part 2. I coined 2020 the mindfulness year because I felt that everyone had to kind of be introspective in light of everything that was going on in the world. So that part was really like people found either themselves wanting or found themselves reconnecting or reestablish relationships or broke off relationships for their mental wellness. While doing this piece, and especially being a Black woman, in light of the Black Lives Movement that was happening globally, this piece helped me kind of give way to some of what I was feeling during that time. My piece is called Numb, and it's really because I felt, to a certain extent, at one point in time, bombarded by well-wishers who were, you know, friends who were, of course, not people of color, and that kind of came to this idea of anti-Blackness and anti-Black racism, like within this pandemic, like it wasn't going on for years and years before this. So it kind of shut me down, and it made me just kind of feel very pained and hurt that this was still happening within the time that my kids are alive and that I'm alive in it, even though back in the day I was very much like I say, an activist, you know, fighting for against this. So it helped me kind of piece my thoughts around that, around what people of color are feeling, BIPOC people especially, and also that it was like this swirling, uncontrollable mass that was trying to kind of like take us under kind of thing. So I'm hoping that my piece would give those sentiments, and also maybe give some more, because art is subjective. So I don't know what people are going to see in the piece, but for me, it was definitely that kind of sentiment.
Thank you. Does anyone want to add on to that answer?
I can go. It's just continuing the thread about it has been for myself as well, as I'm sure we can all relate, that it's been a year of reflection, of processing, and processing a lot of feelings that we have been through, the loss that we've had, cultural loss, connection with people, dealing with our own mental health, our own mental well-being during the pandemic, economical restraints that we've also been feeling. And I felt that this work was an opportunity for myself to sit down, work at small scale, and be in a meditative state, be able to meditate on a lot of these emotions and feelings. I'm a visual artist. I do work through imagery of animals to understand the human-animal relationship. And through this work, I did create a Chihuahua with a colonial 18th century hairdo. It's a large hairdo. And I've been meditating on the cultural imbalances, the cultural pressures that we do put on animals, beasts of burden, animals that we introduce into our family, who sleep with us in our bed as our pets. So I've been looking at this relationship between human and pet relationship, and the weight that is on this Chihuahua, very slender, thin neck. And it's that pressure, physical pressure, that coming down on this individual animal, that I think it's what goes without words, and it's a big feeling that I had difficulty expressing. But I feel that through this meditation, through reflection, I feel that it's very precarious, this relationship that we have, expectations, unrealistic expectations that we do have on these animals that we do farm or we do have for pets, and also unrealistic expectations that we have on each other. So at different levels, I think that this work, this opportunity to be commissioned, has given me an opportunity to reflect on the past year, with different facets, different relationships that we have with ourselves, with our families, with society, and collectively as world. And that's how it is that I can contribute to this conversation.
Thank you. V, Rick, did you guys want to add on to that? V?
In answering the question, the show has allowed me to extend my artist voice by doing what I've always done when things are really complicated, especially with words, by externalizing my experiences through making art. With the show being online, it's a different platform, so we'll be able to share pieces with a larger audience, and hopefully we can reach a lot more people that can relate to the pieces that we're producing and the experiences that we're making with the constraints of words. For my piece, I made a huge textile piece. I kind of see it as a blanket, a covering. It's about 11 feet by 10 feet. And I just wanted to make it really big, and it's got tons of color in it. And I feel like it's really dense, and for me it's kind of like this giant like stream that's going on internally with everything, but like wanting to cover it all with this blanket and just like hide away. Yeah.
Thank you. And Rick?
Wow, like everybody else, I've had a tumultuous year. An emotional year. I lost a big project. I was going to start a feature documentary on the transition from Workman Art's old space to their new space on April the 1st. That didn't happen. My roommate, my best friend's a healthcare provider, and she's working in a facility that had a COVID-19 outbreak. I've been symptomatic 3 times in the last 10 months, and I've had to self-isolate 3 times, of course. My father had a heart attack just at the end of December. And you know, that's led to him moving from into a retirement home. And my mother died from COVID-19. So I'm dealing with a lot of grief and a lot of anger and a lot of frustration and a lot of loneliness, because we're all terribly, terribly lonely. And I was pleased to get this commission, because it allowed me to do something different. You know, I'm a filmmaker and a photographer, and my photography is very mundane, it's austere. It's entirely in the digital realm. And I had started a project just to take photographs of how the light changes the look of my apartment. But I gave that up and decided to do a piece called Calendar, which is 14 photo collages representing months starting from December and going up to January of 2021. And I wanted to do something completely different for me, something in which I'm physically manipulating the work. I printed out almost 200 photographs and ripped them up in little bits and pieces and pasted them onto a background, trying to find some sort of meaning in juxtaposition and overlaying that with text, with figures. I tracked the numbers of people who were ill and who were dying. And I just wanted to find a way to express through my artwork those complex feelings that I have trouble getting out of my mouth. And there was also, back to echo what David said, pictures of our cat Pepper. We rescue cats, and we had little Pepper who had never purred and never meowed and never let us pet him until he had unrelenting access to the 2 of us. And in the middle of the pandemic, we finally heard him purr. We could finally pet him. So he's a big part of this project too.
Thank you for sharing all of that, you guys. It's just wonderful to hear your thoughts that you guys have put into each project. And I was noting some of the keywords that you were all saying. And one of the big ones that I had noted were reflection and healing, reflection on relationships, mindfulness, and of course, you know, V also said externalizing experiences. And so I found that to be quite powerful, because it actually also leads into my next question, which is, you know, another of the major anchor in this exhibition is, of course, the unavoidable kind of pandemic and the global trauma that was, you know, that resulted from it. You know, unfortunately, we've all kind of borne witness to some of the, you know, more harsher, sadder, and the uglier sides of humanity. And so I just wanted to know if your projects, if they have been a source of healing, and how have they been a source of healing? And I know that you guys have talked about mindfulness, which I can understand could be a part of that healing process, but I'm just wondering whether you guys could unpack that a little bit further.
I have a mindfulness practice which helps me deal with mental illness. It's very simple. And I found, as everybody else said, that the process of creating was a mindful process. You know, that it let me reflect on the last year. It let me reflect on the people who are important in my life. It let me reflect on ideas and concepts that are important to me. And hopefully creating a visual montage, the people who see my artwork might find in themselves an opportunity to reflect on how this pandemic has changed their own lives, and ask if there is any way in which this pandemic has improved their lives with the people around them. Hopefully that answer is yes, but I don't know.
I can continue as well.
Yes, please.
Through this process of sculpting the Chihuahua with the hairdo, my kids have also been participating. When they come over, they do see what I'm working on in the studio at home, and they're at a certain age where they are going to be getting a dog. And so my son, he's 7, so he's doing a lot of research. And at the same time, he's at the age where, you know, rebellion does come in, and we have these dialogues of, you know, where you're not the owner of me, come in to play with between parent and child relationship. And I responded, it's true, I'm not the owner of you, but I am responsible for you. And also in relationship to pet ownership, our conversation has been evolving to, we're not the owners. You're not a pet owner, but we're responsible for this other life. So by just changing our vocabulary, I think it's been helpful for understanding what our relationship is with the animals, that we don't have ownership and we shouldn't have, but we are responsible. We have a responsibility. There's a legal responsibility, but there's also another responsibility of living together in a home, and how this relationship evolves. What is this relationship like? And I think we can apply this to our own personal diet, how it is we choose to clothe ourselves, and taking baby steps. But I feel that this project and these conversations, and reflecting on the idea of ownership, reflecting on the idea of the relationships between human animal and non-human animals, that try to see ourselves that one is not better than the other one, that we can coexist in balance, I think speaks a lot to the pandemic, to what we're dealing with as well, where we're destroying a lot of the natural habitat for these animals, and we're coming in much closer contact with these animals. So in this regard, I think that this opportunity, this commission, has helped foster reflection of human to animal relationships, and also to a new generation with my kids through the act of welcoming a dog into the home, to the family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
definitely. If I may say something.
Absolutely.
For me, it was that I'm hoping that my piece will help in kind of giving voice to some of the frustrations and the pain of actually going through COVID, which was in itself such a traumatic experience. Like Rick, I lost a couple loved ones too, and had a close call with my sister who has lupus in New York. Almost lost her. And also with just understanding, you know, the dynamic of family and people that you live with. For me, I think the best part that came out of this is that I think I have a better relationship with my children. I actually can say I love them, but I also like them. Kind of cool. And that was part of my growth within this. It was kind of hard mentally to get around it. You know, there was a lot of sleeping in order to just kind of not deal. And then eventually, when we realized that this COVID, this thing was literally didn't have an end date per se, that we had to kind of figure out a new normal, that our interactions became a bit better. I'm not saying that it's all started off better. We've had some some pushback, we've had some arguments, we've had some like really boundaries being set in order for all of us in this home to be mentally well during this. But we also put up some good boundaries in regards to how much we interact with social media, to not be bombarded with the you know, the sentiments that were happening during the height of COVID, the anti-Black racism and stuff. I had to have some really hard conversations with my son, especially, and my daughters on going out and being safe. Even my therapist put together a group for Black people to actually sit and talk about their experiences of either micro or macroaggressions that they had to deal with during COVID as well. So there have been some shifts in regards to um, healthy mindfulness shifts, as well as some notable reconnecting and solidifying of loving relationships within my home and outside of that too, with, you know, close friends and family and that kind of thing. I think this has brought us a lot closer than we would have been otherwise with the busyness of life. So for that, I'm very grateful, and I'm hoping that my piece will also give a feeling of, you know, the piecing together and the stitching together of our lives after it would make sure that that is cohesive and show a kind of weaving together of a new us moving forward kind of thing.
Thank you. V, I think
Yeah.
you're the last one left for for this question.
So for me, the gift that I've kind of received in making this piece is a companionship. I'm living alone right now. I don't have a partner. I'm not in any bubbles. So it's been a lot of time alone, just me and my lizard hanging out. And so this project has given me, it's like something to occupy my mind and my time. It's given me a purpose and a tool to kind of write out the like never-ending pandemic and bad days. Yeah, it's I did it was a textile piece, so it was a lot of repetition. I had the time, and so I took it to put a lot of work into this piece, and to just work on it every single day. And it did help me in almost like a mindless way. I worked on it. It was just something I did every single day, and even now I miss working on it. Yeah, I feel like it really helped my like body just with processing, having something to do with my hands.
Yes.
And my mind was really important to me.
Yeah.
Rick, did you want to add on to that? I saw you nodding in agreement, and Apanaki too.
Well, you know, I call my piece calendar because when I looked at my calendar from the last year, there's days and days and weeks where I did nothing. You know, so this project was an opportunity to do something, to create something. So, as V said, it was a gift. You know, we thank I thank Workman Arts for this gift that they've given us, they've given all of us.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't quite understand how much I needed to create this piece now to kind of give voice to it, because I was just getting really frustrated with just how the whole pandemic was going, and then my kids were going to school and then they weren't going to school, and then we had to kind of make adjustments, and then we had to, you know, and my son's mental health is being affected by it as well, and I'm trying to support him while I'm trying to support my own mental health. So it was a whole convoluted thing that I think I really needed a piece of art to kind of channel all of those emotions into. So for me, I was really glad to be able to do this, and it kind of came together more or less easily, not as challenging as I thought it would be. So for that, I'm really grateful, and also to just kind of use a different medium that I'd never done before was really fun to do and to be able to add to my art practice as well.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the challenges, and maybe Apanaki, after you answer that one, I can also open the question to the other artists. Can you talk a little bit about the perceived challenges that you thought you were going to have while creating this piece versus the actual challenges that you faced? And just how did you kind of navigate through that?
Well, perceived challenges was just the unknown. I hadn't done embroidery since high school. Actually, my mother gave me a whole lecture on years I've been trying to teach you how to do embroidery, and now you do embroidery? I was like, Mom, like, really? Like, not right now. Using it on tulle, because I did it on tulle, I didn't do it on like fabric, was different too. And I wasn't quite sure exactly how I was going to interpret the image that I was using. And that was in itself interesting challenge. I started sewing it a couple times and then had to rip out stuff and re-sew in order to kind of get the feel that I was looking for. And then also just the immensity of what I was trying to capture. I got some inspiration from another artist who's a feather artist who actually does feather sculptures, one feather at a time kind of thing. And she makes these solid looking sculptures out of feathers. And I think I showcased her on my IG page, and I literally told her, I'm getting inspiration from you for my next piece kind of thing. And like literally tried to capture something kind of like what she was doing, but not quite. But it definitely gave me the feel that I was looking for, even though it wasn't quite rendered the way that I would have liked it to be. I think it worked for what I was doing. So the only challenge was just trying to put all of those elements together and to make it, fit and be seamless. That was the challenge. And of course, Gorilla Glue came to the rescue again. So, so I had to kind of learn while I was going. I had to Google a couple things, but it more or less came out better than I expected. And I loved how the visuals worked with it as well. And I'm glad that I also got a chance to share my process with social media. So I really got feedback from my fans and from my friends and my family about how they felt the process was going. So that was really helpful as well.
Thank you. And to the rest of you, were there any perceived challenges right at the start of creating this your projects, and how did that perception change, or was there a change in the challenges that you thought that you would face at the beginning of your works?
I would say that at the beginning of being commissioned, I did have one project where it was going to be working at larger scale, and that didn't happen as a result of not having studio access, because of that would be heated, that I needed the clay to dry. And when we shift directions to working at a smaller scale, I felt that it was the best choice, because I felt that I needed to sort of stop, to sort of get into a zone where it's be a little bit more intimate. Be intimate with emotions that have been building up. There's only so much that you can run, that you can walk, that you can get fresh air, that you can stretch. And I believe, for my own personal experience as an artist, as a visual artist who is heavily, has a studio practice of fabricating, of hand modeling clay, to come into contact with a material that you can best describe emotions, to process these thoughts, was very beneficial to myself. But I didn't just keep it within myself. I was like, I'll be able to communicate certain frustrations through this work. So to your previous question, it did help me in that aspect too, since we're so cut off from interacting, being in contact with our regular community or people on the street. I was not cut off from creating and coming into contact with the material to best express the anxieties that it is that I have been going through. And I believe a lot of other people have been going through 2020. And I believe that a lot with the forms, I do use Baroque forms with a hairdo, and there's always a push and pull. You can't understand the sculpture just from one position. And I believe that's the anxiety as well. I think the anxiety comes out through this choice of using the Baroque, because it's a constant push and pull. And that's the weight that's coming down of 2020 as well, right? So I believe that coming in contact with material did help a lot therapeutically as part of the process. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Rick, V, did you guys have any challenges prior, or prior to starting, and then throughout or after?
Yeah, for me, initially it was just what materials. Like I have a lot of sewing materials and fabric, but it wasn't necessarily in my original sketch I did. It wasn't the same colors or the same like textile, like fabric that I had envisioned. So I experimented a lot with coloring on like bed sheets and just finding other workarounds to get the final product that I wouldn't necessarily have really thought of before. And then once I did start, I started it too big. Like initially I didn't think I was gonna make it that large, but once I started one component, and then I was like, there's no going back now. So yeah. And then another thing that happened was my sewing machine broke in the middle of it. So that was another challenge to try and work around when we're in lockdown and everything's closed. So yeah.
What a journey. Rick, any challenges that you kind of encountered throughout the process?
Yes. For me, I usually work in the digital realm, and where a mistake is easily fixed as one keystroke, and the mistake is not there anymore. And in my photography, especially, I always strive for perfection. But doing this as an analog project meant that any mistake I made was permanent, and I was initially horrified. And was throwing stuff away. He's like, oh no, I screwed it up. But then I said, no. Well, two things: you're going to run out of time, and you're going to run out of materials. But just embrace the mistakes and go with it, and don't worry that it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be fabulous, because it's going to be something you created with your own hands, which I don't usually do, and it's going to be something that's more organic. And so it was in some sense a release of anxiety, and just let it flow out and go with what you create, and don't worry that it's not perfect.
I think what's beautiful of what all of you guys have echoed is this will to experiment and to try new things, and to face kind of that roller coaster journey of things might go wrong in the process, but then how do we find our way out of it? And, I'm listening to you guys talk about your working process, talk about this kind of healing journey that this project has, I'm really happy to hear that it's given you. And what I find that that has come about from it is that, without trying to repeat what you guys have so beautifully said, it's really helped you guys reconnect back with yourselves, with your family, and with understanding that life is just kind of all over the place, from the most minute things like a sewing machine breaking down to the larger things like this isolation pandemic scenario where we don't know there's so much uncertainty. So I'm so glad that to hear that this project has given you guys purpose, and it has been an outlet and a channel for you guys to put your energy in, and for you guys to kind of use as a mode of expression. It's been such a beautiful, beautiful talk, and I'm so happy that you guys got a chance to express everything and answer the questions that I had. So I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to pass the mic over to Kais.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And thank you all for joining us for our Artist Roundtable and for sharing so openly and willingness with all of us, and to uncover what is the process and the healing that you have found through your art. And again, thank you so much for the privilege in allowing us to tune in with you. And I'd also like to announce, as part of our exhibition's public programming, we're offering a series of mental health check-ins for our artists and the wider public, alongside panel discussions about the art sector and how we are further supporting artists within the margins, alongside a series of professional development workshops to further help and advance artists' careers. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, guys.
Bye. Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.